Hello and welcome to the Tabletop Team podcast. I am your host, Joe, and with me this week are, again, my amazing co-host, still trapped in the depths of Ohio.
This is Michael, and is Ohio even real anymore?
It's Don Julian coming at you live, pre-recorded from a computer. Here we are.
Yeah, Julian says the same things every week, so we just had him pre-record over the week.
And we're going to use this for 52 more episodes.
We've banked a solid 2 years worth of podcasts over the week.
They're just audio clips at this point.
Now, guys, I'm sure, as you are well aware, we are going to be making the biggest transition of podcast history. We are going from tabletops directly into the official Clue fan base podcast, not sponsored by Hasbro. So, because, every episode we've talked about Clue, so why not just go full-blown right into it, just Clue all the day, all the time. Today we are talking about the revolver. Julian, give me your thoughts on the revolver itself.
Well, what I will say about the revolver is it kind of goes hand in hand with the new game that we're going to be releasing next week, Cluno.
Okay, yeah. So that was obviously a very poor bluff, and that's actually what we're talking about this week is bluffing,
Zing.
Lying, all those fun things of keeping the truth away from people in board games and D&D in general. So does anybody have anything to start off with in games that we have played?
Well, I know we joked about Clue, but for me, one of the tricks that I always use with Clue is I will go to a room, and maybe it's a room I have, or maybe it's a room I don't, but I will always guess at least 1 to 2 things that I already have the clue for, trying to kind of just narrow out that one little clue that I'm trying to find and hopefully not find in the case files. But that's one of the ways that I lie in Clue.
I think that's a normal strategy as well. But it's obviously not a winning strategy, as we heard last week with Jason on the podcast, and he color codes all of his notes like a nerd.
Listen, I don't have the attention span for that, so.
We were playing Catan the other night, and one way to bluff in that game is when you're looking for a resource that, you really want, and, they have those Monopoly ones where you can just pull anyone's resources. Before you use that Monopoly one, you could sit there and start trading people with things that you have a bunch of and just see okay, what do people have? I don't even need this. Or I'll be like, hey, does anyone have rock? And I have, a whole bunch of rock. So now they're sitting there going, this dude doesn't have rock. You start throwing them off their little game that they're like, I saw you pick up a whole bunch of rock on that last, 12 that we rolled.
So funny story about our Catan game last night. I traded 3 bricks for a sheep. And that was the only resource I had at the moment. The exact next turn was Julian's wife's turn. And she asks, does anybody have sheep? Because she wasn't paying attention, I guess, to what I traded. And I just kept quiet. And Jason messaged me because he was playing with us too. And he's like, I know you got sheep. Your days are numbered, pal. That's what we were laughing about.
I was wondering why you guys were laughing, because me and her were sitting right face to face when that happened. And I was like, oh, I missed something too, because I think her and I both weren't paying attention. We ordered food or something. That was a good one. Yeah.
The real question is, did that game end your marriage with your wife?
No, and I'll tell you why. And her and I talked about this quite a bit. So in the game we were playing last night, it was we were talking about today, saying how calm it was and how relaxing it was. And it was because our house rule is when you move the thief, you also move the numbers. So let's say you have a 12. Well, if you have the thief, you can actually take a 6 from somewhere and replace it with your 12. And that just destroys relationships, because someone's sitting there has a 6 and an 8 on rocks and wheat. And then all of a sudden now they have a 2 and an 11. And so we weren't fucking each other over constantly. So, then we just have to be like, oh, I need to be civil. Good sir, do you have any straw? Do you have any rocks? You have to beg people. You can't just start stealing their stuff all the time. So, no, we'll have to play in real life.
It was funny because this honestly works very well with lying, because you guys were lying to yourselves about this. They brought up that rule. Julian moves the thief and tries to move the token. Mm-hmm. And me and Jason are like, what? And he's like, yeah, when you move the bandit, you get to move the number token. And we're like, no, you don't. And then it's us 2 against you 2, and then we pull out the rule book, and it's like, no, see, you don't do that, and you 2 were just flabbergasted.
And we pulled out the physical rule book from our personal game that was in our closet. She's opening it up, and yeah, sure enough, it does not say that you can do that. She's like, what have we been doing this whole time?
And I said it a dozen times last night, much like how you two said a dozen times that it definitely makes things chaotic. And I think it sounds fun,
Mm-hmm.
but that obviously wasn't how the game worked. And so we were just like so thrown by that.
Yeah, and because it ruined my beginning moves of, picking locations that I thought were good, not based on their number value, but based on the resources that I would get.
We did use the one house rule of randomizing the number tokens instead of doing it in like the ABC order you're supposed to.
Right, yeah.
So you had you claimed 2 tiles that had 11s on them or something stupid like
I
that.
had 11 and 12.
Yeah.
And I had 11, 12, 5, and I want to say 6. Right off the bat. So, I guess that 6 was okay, but those 11 and 12 sucked. They never got rolled.
Yeah.
Well, so based off of our topic, how many times did you guys lie about having only 7 cards in hand, or exactly 7 cards in hand when the thief was rolled?
So this is something that the game we were playing on Tabletop Simulator, it does not allow for a lot of bluffing in that regard, or even cheating, because everyone could see everyone's cards.
Oh yeah, I'm thinking it was like, yeah, you're just holding them in your
Right.
physical hands. No.
A lot of it is scripted. So like it was a really cool system on Tabletop Simulator because you roll the dice and then you just click a button and it gives all the cards to everybody.
Yeah. So that was one thing about, as far as bluffing goes in this game that we were playing last night, was that I could see Rothio and I could see her facial expressions and I could see everything where you guys couldn't, but I also couldn't see you guys. So anytime she had I'm looking at her, scheming, and I'm like, okay, what is she up to? And that's something that I think is really important in physical, in-person games, is reading the person and reading their, quote unquote, poker face. So whenever someone's got these good cards, or they're thinking they're about to make this new move, you're like, all right, what is happening here? I'm going to start paying attention to them. I'm going to ruin everything they're about to do. And I can't do that when you guys are, just a voice.
See, the great thing about that is if you have a terrible poker face like myself, what you can randomly do is just pretend that you're lying every once in a while and give that poker face of like, oh shit. Or I one of the things that I love to do is I'll just randomly start counting road tiles. Especially if I don't have longest road, just to make that longest road person super paranoid. What's he about to do? What's he about to do? Oh.
That's good. That's good.
Another game that's got some good bluffing in it is Werewolf. I talked about this before, but it goes through a night, and then in the morning, the townsfolk need to weed out who the werewolf is. And so while depending on what cards are in play, you might not know what you are, but there's also a good chance that it's just, there's just werewolves, townsfolks, and maybe the tanner, which I'll explain in a moment. But, you wake up and you go, I'm not a townsfolk. I'm not. So, or whatever. I'm not a werewolf. And then, for example, there's this character called the tanner, and they want to die. So they might lie and say they're a werewolf, but or at least try to make people think that they're a werewolf. So that's a game where you definitely need to bluff your way into convincing people you're, innocent or guilty. My favorite strategy in that is to just be honest all the time. It really messes with people.
Yeah.
Because you look at it, you're like, I'm a werewolf. And they're like, what? Why would you say that? Because I am. But no, he can't be telling the truth, can he?
Right.
He doesn't want to lose. I've played this game with my friends. We've probably played it hundreds of times because it's a really quick game. You can get through a whole game in 15, 20 minutes pretty easily. Wow. So we've played it a bunch of times, and they sometimes catch on to my bullshit, but they still fall for it most of the time.
Another great little trick that you can do in games like Werewolf, more specifically, I'm thinking of Mafia because I've never played Werewolf. It's when you have 2 Mafia members and there's heavy suspicion on one of the Mafia members, is to just kill off that Mafia member that night, because then all of a sudden everyone's like, oh fuck, it definitely wasn't them.
Oh yeah.
But that also means you have one less member on your team.
Yeah, that makes
sense. It's definitely a high risk, high reward. It's because especially give me one of those things oh, I'm gonna vote because obviously when you're voting who you think of the Mafia is, you don't always want to do it, but generally speaking, you want to kind of agree with your partner. And every once in a while, people are like, oh, these two keep voting together every once in a while. And then kind of just kill off one of the Mafia members, and they'll instantly start to trust that other Mafia member because, oh, hey, he was voting with someone who was clearly not the Mafia person because they just died.
Why would he do that?
Yeah.
That reminds me of the game Deception, I think it's called, where you have spies versus regular people. Oh, Resistance, you're right. So one time, Rothio and I were playing at a a friend's house, and me and her friend's husband were the spies, and we were at a table of like 6 or 7 people, and no one believed it was us, but I kept accusing Rothea's friend, who was the wife of the other spy, and this girl was like, it's not me, I swear, and she just could not convince anyone. And I'm just sitting there going like, the more you deny it, the worse it is for you right now. And I felt like that was a pretty interesting bluff strategy of just accusing everyone else, and anyone that seemed the most innocent, just absolutely say it is them.
That reminds me of another great strategy I like to use, and that is accusing somebody the second you can accuse somebody. Like, you have no facts, you have no proof, you just go, it's you. And sometimes they panic, and other times they get really mad at you for constantly accusing them.
I gotta say, that's an incredible strategy, and I'll tell you why I think so. When you're the first person to accuse, I feel like that's all it takes is to get the ball rolling on the accusation. Don't let anyone else start thinking, because now everyone has it in their head. Oh, it's Joe that is the person. And so then they're going, well, but it's gotta be, they start getting confirmation biases every time they think about things. Yeah, I like that strategy a lot.
It also reminds me of when we played Among Us, Joe, you, myself, and some of your friends. And if you lived, you were automatically the imposter, because you just got killed off like first thing right away. A couple of those.
You guys ever play Balderdash?
I think once.
So Balderdash works this way. You get a word, and let's say that the word is, I'm going to use an easy word, but the word is season. And so then everyone has to now write a definition for the word season. And then the person that's in charge of reading the cards will read every definition out loud. And then everyone votes, or that person might just pick what the correct definition is. And if you made up the best definition, and then that's you winning. So this is like another
Humanity.
Yeah, kind of. But you just
down.
Yeah, but you don't have to write anything funny. So let's say for season, you could just say like adding flavor to a dish, or
if you live in Ohio, a goddamn lie.
Yeah. So that's kind of like how it is, and you definitely have to bluff in written form for that game.
There was another game that reminded me is, I think it's like Secret Word or something, or Code Word. There's a group of people. One person doesn't know a word, and everybody else does, but nobody knows who doesn't know the word.
Okay.
And then there's a board of adjectives, and you point to it, and you need to be able to describe why that adjective matches the word without saying the word first off, because that'll give away the person who doesn't know.
Interesting.
Like, basically people could be like, so say you say salamander, and somebody points to like slimy, scaly, reptile, and then somebody points to like, I don't know, taste.
Delicious.
Delicious. And you're just like, why delicious? And you're like, well, that they're always delicious or something like that. Kind of
Have you ever tried it?
Yeah, exactly. That's what you got to do. So that's another game where you have to like bluff your way through.
What's it called again?
Fudge. I can't remember.
Oh, man.
Hey, everyone. Future Editor Joe here. The game I was trying to describe is called The Chameleon. I'll look it up. There's a lot of game. I remember the base of the games. I can't remember the names. There's a Jackbox game that's very similar to this where...
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's given like a prompt. It'll be, except for one person, it'll be like, raise your hand if, you've ever murdered somebody.
One of the games that I am also just thinking about is called The Game of Things. And basically what it is, it's kind of like Cards Against Humanity, where every card is a blank card and you have to write in your answer. And you want to bluff and like make it seem like it's not something that you would say, because one person reads and the person next to them guesses who they think who said what.
Oh.
Obviously, if you guess any correct, you get points. But if yours is guessed last, you get like extra points because yours was guessed last. Like no one else knew whose was whose.
Oh, so it's like a process of elimination.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting game. And obviously, the person reading the cards can't guess because they could just tell by handwriting.
Oh, sure, yeah. So one game I haven't played, and I don't know if you guys have played. I feel like Joe might have played because he brought it up. But the Sheriff of Nottingham game.
I haven't played it, but I've watched a lot of videos on it. It looks, I can definitely explain this game if you, or do you want to take it?
Okay, so I don't think I could explain it as well as you, but it sounds like part of the basis is everyone has items of some sort, and the sheriff can come and be like, hey, do you have contraband? And depending on how many of the items, you could maybe give him one or two, and you get points for getting that contraband. But if you have more and he shakes you down, he gets even more points. But if you don't have any more items and he shakes you down, he loses in some regard. So you want to kind of balance I only have a limited amount of resources, because I think the benefit, Joe, you might be able to.
Yeah, I'll fill in the blanks. You got a good chunk of it. So it starts off, one person is the sheriff, and then everybody else is a merchant. And there's you have a deck of, you have items dealt to you, and you put them into a pouch, and then the sheriff tries to shake you down and be like, is there contraband in here? Or you have to declare what goes through. So there's different things. I know there's apples, there's bread, there's cheese, and there's some other things. And it's apples, for example, are worth the least amount of points. But if you get a certain amount of apples, you get the apple bonus, which is the biggest bonus in the game. And there's things like that. So first off, you have to declare what you're sending through, and you can't declare contraband, which gives you extra points for whatever it is. Now, the sheriff can open your pouch, take a look and see, and if there is contraband or not what you declared, they get to confiscate the items, and then you also have to pay a fee. If they open your pouch and what you said is true, then they have to pay you a fee for opening your stuff. And then you can obviously just pass through, and you're allowed to make deals with the sheriff and stuff, hey, I'll give you 2 gold if you don't look at my pouch, or...
That's called a bribe.
Yeah, you can bribe, or you could be because the sheriff goes to the next player, everybody gets to be the sheriff twice or something, at least. So you can be hey, if you don't look at my pouch, I won't look at yours when it's my turn. And of course, you could totally be lying about that last part too,
right.
Or hey, if you take this continent, I won't attack you.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's another good lie is when your friend says, "Hey, let's play Risk." Yeah, I tried to block it from my mind, and then I've played Risk before. He's like, "Don't worry, I'll teach you." Then he goes,
"Teach you how to lose."
Take all the continents, and I go, "Oh, good. I have one guy on 80% of the board." And then he goes, "You're out of the game because I just killed you because you stretched your army tooth." And I'm like, "You told me to do it." And you're
I thought I was winning.
It also reminds me of, I know there's quite a few games that do this, but the one I'm thinking right now is Old Maid, where you have to take a card from another player and how you bluff. If it's a card you want them to take, do you hold on and pretend it's a card you don't want them to have?
I haven't played Old Maid in so stinking long.
Since the dawn of time.
Yeah, that's a blast from the freaking past, man.
Another fun kind of pseudo mafia-ish game is called Two Rooms and a Boom. And what it is, you have a bomber and the president, and your goal, if you're the bomber team, is to end the game, because there's only so many rounds, I think 6, I'm not sure off the top of my head. You get to swap people back and forth, and it's just a 30-40 person game.
Oh wow.
Your goal, if you're the bomber, is to end with the bomber in the same room as the president, and obviously if you're the Secret Service, vice versa.
It's a big game that we have, and not even a game, just a category of games we probably could touch on with bluffing, is poker.
I mean, I was trying to avoid it on purpose because it's the whole point of the game.
Yeah, just a lie.
Depends on who you play with. Some people, my good friend Jeff, one of the first times I played Texas Hold'em with him, he never bluffed. He was either out or in all the way every single time.
That's such a good strategy. Oh, I guess I'll fold on this one because he's calling it, or he's going all in again. It's a second hand.
And then I tried. Well, the thing is that because I didn't know that was his thing, is I would try to bluff him out of things, and he just would never cave.
It's I have 2
He's
kings.
learned now a little bit, but still.
That's a good strategy. If you don't know anything about poker, I feel like bluffing is just all you should do. I have no idea how to play poker a strategical way, but so don't take my advice. I just think bluffing is awesome.
I mean, if I'm playing poker, I forget the name of it, but I don't like to play Texas Hold'em. I like to play the game where everyone holds up a card to their head, and your goal is to guess bet like, oh, I think my card can beat your card based off of what I see,
Oh, yeah.
and that might not even be poker, but that's a fun game to play.
I feel like I don't think it is, but I think it should be. That'd be so funny to see in casinos.
Just a bunch of shit-faced white people going, I bet I can win.
Yeah. So I do want to throw out one more thing before we move on. I'm going to name one game, and I want you guys to try to figure out. This is a game where you, in my mind, you cannot bluff. No matter how hard you try, if you're following the rules, you cannot bluff. So I want you guys to see if you can think of something. Candyland.
All right, Candyland.
So for those of you who don't know Candyland, all you do is you draw a card, and it has a color on it, and then you have to go to the next color on that space. With the exception of there's like the special cards where it can take you to the specific like kingdoms or whatever. And your goal is to get to the end of the board.
I mean, obviously, you can just subtly move your token forward one every once in a while while no one's looking and it's not your turn.
I agree that you can do that, but that I feel like falls more in the realm of cheating versus bluffing.
I mean, it is 100% cheating, but you're cheating by bluffing. Like, yeah, I was on that spot the entire time. What are you talking about?
Okay, that's where I would say it sounds more like bluffing.
You play with someone you don't know, and you say you're colorblind.
Oh my god!
Ooh, yeah. Okay, so now we're getting into it. We're workshopping. I'm gonna beat the shit out of my kids next time. In the game.
Learn how to count cards. Or not count cards, stack the deck in your favor.
Yeah, that's right.
If you're the person shuffling.
I mean, you could always introduce a home rule where, like, you don't show the card to everybody else and they just have to believe you. And you just can't push it. Like, you can't obviously be like...
win.
You can't just be like, I got blue every single time. Huh, that's weird. It just instantly got to the end. But then you also have to, like, space it out because you can't be like, well, I'm just getting the colors in order. Man, that's weird. I don't know. That was just a stupid idea I had.
It can work. We have the technology.
All right, so let's move on to D&D news. So, very recently, Unearthed Arcana released some new shit. We got new Dragonborn stuff. Did you guys take a look at this? Or
I did not. I was waiting for the news.
You guys are terrible co-hosts.
I'd like to react, live reaction.
Okay.
I'm bluffing on my reaction.
Well, let me pull up the
Joke's on you, I'm bluffing about everything.
Oh, dear God. I can't handle the bluffs on bluffs.
I don't even live in Ohio.
I don't believe it's real.
All right. They added some new dragon spells, and they decided to expand upon the Dragonborn races to make them feel more like you're coming from a draconic lineage, because a lot of people wanted that. So the biggest thing out of all of them is we already before had chromatic and metallic dragons and dragonborns. They now introduced gem dragonborns, so you can have gemstones, which are really cool because the colors and metallics all fell under standard damages, elemental types, fire, electric, ice, things like that. Now with the gemstones, they have an amethyst be resistant to force, crystal is resistant to radiant, emerald is psychic, sapphire is thunder, and topaz is necrotic, so you can have a dragonborn resistant to that stuff.
As opposed to they never had resistance before?
No, they did. It was just ice, lightning, poison, fire, and cold, which are like your basic elemental types.
Right.
So you can have a much more varied resistance, which is kind of crazy because like force is the least damage type in all of D&D.
I'm kind of frustrated that they didn't release some sort of dark vision for Dragonborns. I know it's not perfect, but a lot of reptiles have some sort of heat sensing ability, and it just thematically makes sense. If you think reptile, you think dragon, that they should have some sort of heat sense, and therefore should have a variant of dark vision, where it's not perfect, but like...
Well, I think I'd have to look it up. But I think even like wormlings have blind sight, and then as the age of the dragon goes up, it just gets better and better until they have true sight. So it definitely makes sense that they should have some sort of better vision.
Especially like dragons, for the most part, spend a lot of time in caves and dungeons.
On top of that, they've also changed up the breath weapon for each type. Chromatic, I believe, is the same. I could be wrong with the ranges, and again, this is all Unearthed Arcana, so it could, subject to change. But currently, I had that backwards. So Chromatic does a 30-foot line that is 5 foot wide. You still do a dex save, and it's 2d8 damage, and it goes up at certain levels. I think it's all the same levels for cantrips. And then they also come with Chromatic Warding, so starting at 3rd level, as an action, you can channel your draconic energies to protect yourself. For 10 minutes, you become immune to the damage type associated with your chromatic ancestry. Once you use this trait, you can't use it until you finish a long rest. So, man, 3rd level full damage immunity for a minute. That's actually kind of crazy.
Is it a concentration? Is that what you said
No.
it was?
No.
Oh, wow. So you can do other things while you're doing that.
Yeah. I mean,
Alright.
it's an action, but still to be 10 minutes. Holy crap.
Yeah, that's why I asked if it was concentration.
Yeah.
Those fire type Dragonborns are gonna come in real handy when you're fighting wizards.
Yeah.
I cast Fireball. It does nothing.
Of course, you have to be prepared, but then again, like 10 minutes, you could definitely I know a lot of people can do surprise attacks and stuff, but especially like later game, it's like a lot of times you're getting into a fight, and it's like
Right.
you don't have to worry about that precious minute you have. Instead, you could be like 10 minutes. Well, I'm just gonna pop this right now.
Yeah.
Metallics have a 15-foot cone for breath weapon. Same damage rules apply. Now, Metallic Dragonborns also have a metallic breath weapon option. So at 3rd level, you gain a 2nd breath weapon. When you take the attack action, you can place one of your attacks with an exhalation of magical gas and a 15-foot cone. Say blah, blah, blah. Each creature in the area, you could choose one of the two things. Each creature in the area must succeed on a strength saving throw or be pushed 20 feet away from you and be knocked prone. Or each creature in the area must succeed on a constitution saving throw or become incapacitated until the start of your next turn. You can't use that until a long rest.
That sounds incredibly broken. The incapacitated until your next turn.
Yeah.
That's a TPK recipe right there.
Yeah, a 15-foot cone is pretty decent too. Like, you don't have to all be grouped up for that to hit you.
Well, especially if you're fighting like multiples, if one hits you with the knockback and like clusters you even more, and then the second one hits you with the incapacitated, you're just down for the count.
Yeah. And let's see. The Gem Dragonborns, they as well do a 15-foot cone. Psionic Mind. So Gem Dragonborns can telepathically speak to any creature they can see within 30 feet. Can't remember if there's another race that does that. I think it's one of the more obscure ones. And then there's also, of course, the invocation for... No, not invocation. No. Great Old One. Patron for Warlocks. And then they have Gem Flight, so at 3rd level they can magically fly for 1 minute. That's not too broken. That's basically the same as an ASMR Radiant one. They also buffed Kobolds in this.
They're 6 feet tall now.
Kobolds do not need buffing.
Yeah, they made it so you have advantage on saving throws against being frightened or ending frightened. One cantrip of your choice from the sorcerer spell list. You can make an unarmed strike with your tail. When you hit with it, it's 1d6 plus your strength modifier. Draconic Roar, as a bonus action, you let out a Draconic Roar at your enemy within 10 feet of you until the end of the next turn. You and your allies have advantage on attack rolls against any of those enemies who hear the roar. You can use this trait a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. Gain all uses on a long rest.
Oh, so this sounds more like they're buffing the kobold player race and not the monster itself.
Oh yes, that's
that's what I was thinking it was.
I was thinking they were buffing the monsters. Like, those things can be deadly.
Yeah.
Level 1 monster with advantage if played right? Nope.
Yeah, definitely bad. They have a feat for each of the new Dragonborn types, and then they introduced a whole bunch of dragon spells. Like there's a spell that turns you into a dragon. That's a 7th level spell. There's one that like summons a draconic spirit. Yeah, it's a pretty dense one. I like the rate, but I like the races. I really like the diversity. And what's interesting to me is them introducing Gem Dragonborns, even though there are no Gem Dragons in D&D, as far as I'm aware. I haven't seen any official rules for them.
I don't know about official, but I know there's a lot of third party.
Oh, of course there's third party. I mean, I have a book full of them, but I'm just saying it's kind of cool to actually see like official... To the idea of getting an official gemstone dragon just sounds cool to me.
I'd love to see them, and this is a more obscure dragon, but this is actually even in the monster manual. I'd love to see a Shadow Dragonborn playable race based off of the young adult Shadow Dragon. which is really fun. It basically can disappear in dark light. Can use a bonus action to hide. It's a lot of fun, and it's got a really unique breath weapon where if it kills someone with that breath weapon, it reanimates them as a not quite a zombie, but it reanimates them on their side.
Oh, like a little companion.
Like a minion.
Oh, yeah. Wow. One thing I find really interesting about these Dragonborns and the different abilities that they have with the different gemstones is it really makes a Dragonborn race a lot more robust, where sometimes when you have other races where it just is like, I guess this is all you get, now you can, I don't know, it kind of feels like you can customize their backstory a lot more too. Like, why do they have this specific gemstone? And that's where my head goes with a lot of this stuff that you were mentioning.
Yeah, because beforehand, I'm just looking up the stats real quick. Beforehand, it was you gain a damage resistance and you have your breath weapon. Ooh, I didn't know this. So apparently, they did buff the breath weapons in general because they're all D8s and the original stats are D6s. So, but yeah, to go from just having a breath weapon, which in all honesty, every time I've seen it used, like, it's okay at low levels, but as you get higher, even though it scales with you, it's just not worth it with most of your attacks, especially because it's your whole action. I think that's the other problem. It's your whole action. So, but to like actually buff up the damage a little bit and then give them different like variations, it could definitely be more useful in my opinion.
It definitely sounds like it's been improved to on level cantrips and
Yes.
how those scale.
So the breath weapon holds like a special place in my heart. I cannot remember your character's name, but the day that we... Dario, that's right. So when we found out Dario was a Dragonborn, that moment that we found out he was tied to like a stake and we were all locked in a cage and all of our weapons were gone and everything, and then Dario is like being interrogated and he just spits on this dude, and it was like, wait, what? Why? What? It was like such a really cool turn that I wasn't expecting, which made the game that much more fun.
That was something, because this being my first ever D&D character, that it was something that I was really excited about, because I loved the idea of Dragonborn, but I didn't necessarily like the obviousness of it. So I talked to Joe, and he basically approved a half human, half Dragonborn race.
That's right.
Where it's like I get all these benefits, and it was great because I had this little secret, because I even going in, I thought a fighter was going to be boring, and like this little secret of like, oh, I'm not just human, I appear to be. But
and didn't Dario have a brother that was full on Dragonborn looking?
Yeah,
yes,
it was based off of it's very rare, but occasionally mixed children can like have a lot of the skin pigmentation that gravitate towards one and not the other, and that was the whole idea behind it.
Oh, okay, yeah. But I so when we're talking about the dragon's breath and all the different abilities, all I think is that day, how incredible that was. For story element, the story was incredible.
Just to say how worthless the breath weapon is too is
fun fact, I only ever used that one other time.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I gave you a lot of magic items to try and buff it. Like I wanted to make it so it wasn't completely worthless to you, but like I made it so he could change like the damage type, and then I think I buffed I gave you something that buffed its damage itself at one point, and you never used it, and it's fine.
That's because I switched to wizard, and also like it was also a great ace up the sleeve. It's just like, oh hey, I'm going to use this just rarely enough that Joe's going to forget that I have this.
Oh yeah.
I think that's one thing I didn't actually forget. Okay, well, that's news on dragons. I'm not going to go over all the spells. There's too much. This part's gone on too long. It's still pretty cool to see them expanding on what they already have. New stuff is fun, but expanding on stuff is also really cool. So, bluffing in D&D. So, obviously, as a dungeon master, this is something you do all the time. You are never giving your players full information right off the bat, especially. You are beating around the bush. You are playing as characters who are just straight up lying, like when you have secret big bads. Do either of you have any good stories or examples of lying in D&D?
I don't necessarily have one, but I'm going to get you on official record with this. A lot of DMs tend to fudge rules, definitely in the earlier parts of the campaigns where characters can tend to be very fragile.
In my player's favor, almost always in my player's favor.
So you do You
all the time.
do. Okay.
All the
I
time.
wondered.
Almost always in my players' favor, though. Like, especially like when it's early, I'm like, I don't want to kill them.
It was just one of those things, like with us in the America campaign, like we're all casters, like statistic, and one of us.
I have not.
Well,
That is one thing, is I have not lied in the Merca campaign once. Surprisingly,
fucking
that
liar.
I have not lied in, because you guys are all casters and I want to see what happens. I'm letting the dice tell their story there. But like Bar Walk campaign, especially when we started off, no one knew how to play D&D. There was my sister, and Jason was like okay with it, but like none of them really knew how to play D&D. So I didn't want to. I didn't want to hit them too hard. And like their first enemy was, I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically an ogre, and on its back is like a hut, and it carries 4 goblins in it, and it can throw the goblins at people. And that was the first enemy I threw at them.
that's an amazing enemy.
Yeah.
And that thing, if I didn't fudge the rolls, they would be dead. Because if I remember correctly, 3 out of the 5 of them were down by the end of the fight, too. Like, that's how tough it was.
I just had to ask because, like, the mere fact that Elijah has survived this long is just like there's no
Pure luck for that. Pure luck for that half elf. But no,
I'm a sorcerer. Let's go face check this bush.
But no, I have not. Murica, I honestly have not lied in, but I do lie all the time in my games. Like I said, it's either for my players' favor, or if they're in a big boss fight. I have done it in my own favor, where it's like it has been like 5 or 6 rounds, no joke, and my boss has not hit them once. I will fudge it so that way it hits them at least, so I don't feel so bad that the total
That's fair.
raffle stomped me.
And I've definitely, when DMing, I've definitely secretly, especially when it's very frustrating when you've got the combats where you're like, oh, this is a very scary boss, and like according to CR, they should be able to handle this, but it should be a tough fight.
Speaking of the biggest lie in D&D is the challenge rating.
Oh, absolutely. But I would just throw a boss at them. Should be a difficult fight, and they just like round 1, it's already down to like less than 10% health. I'm like, no, we're just gonna give you some magical healing.
He just rolled 10 D100s.
Well, like not even that. Like just like I know a lot of specifically trolls have like regeneration.
Oh, yeah.
Like every once in a while, I'll be like, oh yeah, this boss randomly has trollish blood in them. Who would have known?
His great
Either
uncle.
that or you double the health, like in that one turn. You're like, okay, double the health. Good.
But you just said he was bloody.
You've almost bloodied. That's what I said.
Nice. So as a player, I don't feel like there's as many opportunities in that way to bluff as much as there is. We were talking about this earlier where, hey, I want to go steal this thing from this innkeeper. Well, they ask if you are related to so-and-so. Yeah, I'm related. All right, roll 3. Yeah, you're definitely not related. You do not get to bluff, and it's not fair.
Well, here's the thing, too, is like, obviously there will be DMs that are hard on the rules. Like, you roll, no matter what you say or do, you roll to, roll a deception check, you pass or fail. Of course, there could be other times, there are DMs like myself where it's like, if you say something that makes sense or is convincing enough to me, then I might be like, roll with advantage, or I'll lower the DC so even like a really low roll can fix it. Or if you're like, I want this to succeed, but like there's a bit of like logic that it wouldn't, you roll an insight check for the as a DM, you roll an insight check for the NPC. Yeah. And just be like, well, they probably don't add anything to this, and hope you roll low like Joe always does. So
this isn't D&D, at least not 5th edition, but one of the things that I was reading that was brought up is instead of just pass, fail, and it just being black and white, is like, oh, you passed, but there's going to be a cost to this. Like saying, oh, hey, I'm related to so-and-so. Yeah, you passed, but like someday down the line, no, you might have to spend an entire day bullshitting your way through a family gathering or something like that.
You turn into the Wedding Crashers movie.
I mean, I think that's a great opportunity because, like, as a player, I understand that I'm not going to be the best at everything, and I don't strive out to be the best at everything. But like, when it's something you're supposed to be good at, and you just like outright fail, you're just like, cool.
No, so it reminds me of, and I think on another podcast I brought it up, where Mitch's character tried to bluff and say his name all the time at different things. And my character was just like, okay, so I know in real life what your name is, and now I have to play that we don't know your name. And now I have to
Yeah.
sit here and every other role is trying to figure out what it is.
Speaking of bluffing and characters, Alfred, Mitch's character, I remember like the first time he met the king, he's like, yes, my name is Cherry Dude, and he rolled like a natural 20. So he bluffed so hard that I had it change the fabric of time, and that was like the first like hint to time travel, because that campaign got into time travel stuff, and that was like my first hint to time travel to you guys, was the fact that Cherry Dude was already this revered hero, and he had like paintings of himself like all over the
that's
town.
right. That's right. And
And everybody was paintings. Like, what's going on? And even Mitch is like, I don't know.
Yeah, like I bluffed so hard it's coming to real life. I don't know what's happening anymore.
Believe it hard enough, it's just the truth.
Yeah.
No. So what are you guys' opinion on player versus player lying insight checks, things of that nature? Are you a fan of, don't like?
Player versus player, say it one more time.
So a lot of campaigns can sometimes deal with PvP combat. And another, like, something similar to this is a lot of people who play rogues tend to steal from their party members, and it's not necessarily just, oh, I'm going to cut his head, like, not stuff like that, but just like, what are your thoughts of when dealing with either as a player or as a DM, when two characters are specifically lying to each other, or do you just kind of like cut that out? I don't like that. Or do you let it happen?
I mean, like I said before, I haven't run too many games, and obviously there's always horror stories you hear online about, players lying to each other and stealing from each other. It all depends on the situation for me. For example, in Bardwalk, Henrik stole something from Bernard the Bard. But that was because what happened is it was the potion of magical happenstance, or the draft of magical happenstance, which is this fun item. Like, I actually have like the physical bottle. I think I showed you guys this. And inside, it works like a magic 8-ball, and it says what the effect of the potion is. And Bernard took it twice in a row and got really bad effects both times. And it's a 50-50 on good and bad. He just happened to roll really shitty both times. And so while he's like on the effects of the second one where he's like blind or something, Henrik stole the potion from him because he didn't want him to drink it anymore, because to them, Jason's a really good role player. He's like, Jason, know it has a 50% chance to be good, but Henrik has no indication of that. So he's going to take that and keep it away from him. And, that's obviously something that makes sense. However, there's another time in the same campaign where Bernard used, because Jeff is like a kindred soul spirit and loves wild magic shit like me, he had a Rod of Wonder, which does random magic as well. And he used it randomly and turned himself invisible. And then he didn't even roll for this, he just stole this thing called a God Shard, which was an extremely powerful relic in the game, and just like used it on his face and made his beard better, or fixed his beard because it got burned off.
Oh, okay, so for a good reason.
Well, yeah, there was a whole story. Basically, I should probably bring this up. So what happened is Bernard was on the run from his father because he didn't want to be a barbarian. He wanted to be a bard. And eventually, when he was forced to confront him, his father beat him in a duel and burned his beard off because it was supposed to be like symbolic, like you're not part of the family anymore. And it was supposed to be like this heavy weight for him. Of course, that exact same session when he like went invisible, he took the shard and just smashed it on his face. And I'm like, well, I mean, there's no reason that wouldn't fix your beard, so you just got out with no consequences, I guess, or no repercussions. But yeah, that was another, and that was something I kind of regret because I didn't even make him roll for it. I just let it happen. But at the same time, Jason said it was too funny and he let it slide. But did I stay on topic, or did I just go off on another tangent?
I don't know, but
mostly on topic.
Yeah, but as a player, I don't know if I've ever encountered where we're stealing something that isn't like from each other, that isn't kind of part of the story, like in a malicious way, where it's be like, hey, I want this item from this person, I'm gonna take it. All right, or roll. But I do remember there was a point where in our campaign we were doing something and we all were taking something from each other, and I don't remember what it was, but we kept trying to get something.
The die of power.
The die of power.
Yes, that's what it was, and we all wanted it, and we all wanted to keep using it. But at the same time, it might have been my character.
The two chaos goblins wanted to use it.
Yeah, that's, I remember
Clint
wanting to
Alfred
use it.
wanted to use it. Dario and Ashiro were like, no, we're good. We just don't want you two to use this.
I remember it doing a lot of good, though. Or at the very least, it was awesome.
It did save us from a likely multiple character death situation.
If I remember correctly, we only got to roll it one time each, right?
Yeah. Well, you got one free roll, and then every roll after that had consequences.
Because it came directly from the Futurama made-for-TV movie Bender's Game. And, you roll it and a magical effect happens that's an extremely great boon for you. It's also kind of a ripoff off the One Ring. If you're strong enough willed, you can be like, no, I'm not. Use it once, you're like, I'm good. Take it away or whatever. But then after that, the idea was it either drove you mad, it would take your levels away, or it would age you. It would be some price for this power. But Joe didn't want the price to be there right off the bat and be like, everybody should roll this at least once for the fun of it.
Right. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I always like when something comes into the game, it's like, all right, who's prepared for whatever could happen?
Oh, I was so nervous because when I had pulled that, I think you were dead. No. Yeah.
I don't know.
It was either you or no, Shira died in the Dragon Turtle fight. So yeah, you were dead. Our only healer was dead. Mitch was down, I believe, and then Ashir was at low health, and I'm a wizard, so I'm like, fuck, I don't have any else.
Yeah.
And the turn before, I'm like, should I use it? Should I not use it? And then you died, and I was like, fuck, I got to use this. And I knew when I took it that it was going to be a life or death situation when I pulled that out of my pocket. And I knew that I was going to use it at some point in the campaign, and I pulled that out right at that moment.
I loved when we got the diet power. We got it so early on and didn't do anything with it for such a long time.
Yeah,
Quizzard
'cause I
died
had it.
fighting an army, and he rolled it to kill the army, right?
Yeah, and we
That
didn't
was
use
a
it.
scripted story event.
Yeah.
We didn't use it because I was the one who had it, and I much like when I play any video game that has rare consumable items, where it's like, oh hey, using sparingly, it immediately goes in my mind, don't ever use this.
Oh man, yeah, I'm like the opposite. Whenever I have anything in a game, I'm like, I'm burning through this, man, because if I have all this stuff left over later, I'm just gonna be angry that I never used it.
That's definitely a topic for a future episode, is extremely powerful magical items like the Deck of Many Things and the Die of Power. That'll be a fun one. One thing I find kind of interesting almost is how there are spells for lying. There's the cantrip Friends, which just gives you persuasion, but then you can charm person and make people think you're their best friend. And then Acquisitions Incorporated adds a whole bunch of lying things like distort value, where you can make somebody think something costs more or less if you cast the spell on it.
I have not heard of that one.
Yeah, that's one I've only ever heard of once being used.
I like the charm person one, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't when the spell ends, they know that they were charmed?
Yes, that's one of the key features of that spell some people forget about.
Yeah, that's one that I think is awesome, because the spell doesn't last super long. It lasts long enough for you to get whatever it's done, but then that person later, isn't it eventually going to be like, hey, that dude just totally ripped me off?
I mean, potentially, but I mean, depending on how devious you want to get, you could always go with Modify Memory.
Oh man, I don't even know that spell either.
The lie is so deep. They
this is like Men in Black stuff. Look into this pen.
I mean, it basically is. I think.
Oh wow!
It's within 24 hours is the longest it can go. I know, if you cast it at higher levels, it scales for more time. But
Holy cow,
you could do some insane things with Modify Memory.
Yeah.
So, what are some good bluffs you guys have used with, Charm Person, or what's something you've encountered where you're like, wow, I cannot believe this worked? Because I feel like my characters always have low charisma and can never pass those things.
As a DM, a classic Charm Person move is, or suggestion, is to always get your players to fight each other.
Oh.
Because one of the things I've learned with playing with a bigger party, because right now, again, Bar Walk is 5, sometimes 6 players. So having a bunch of minions on the board has gotten really confusing. So now what I do is I typically do one large enemy. And that makes things go smoother, and it still is usually a fun fight. But, when they fought the Lich at one point, and I had it, charm person for, the barbarian to go attack somebody else. But at the same time, because he has such high charisma, because he's a barbarian.
Oh, yeah. I always find that really funny.
That'd be one of the things where it's the Lich would be like, oh, this is a muscly meathead. He can't pass this. And then it's oh, you can because he's very charismatic.
See, I wonder how fighting another player character would be under Charm Person or under whatever spell. If you're going to go full bore on this, or what are we going to do?
It's funny because some people play it right. Like if you just say, "Hey, I want you to attack this person," they're always like, what do I have to do? Like, do I have to, full attack
slap
them? Or yeah, like can I like just punch them and not do as much damage?" And it's like, no, you can't do that. And then you have some players who are really fun with it, and they're like, okay, I need to kill my party member. Here's my highest level fireball. I think Lugoth did that once because that's like one of the spells they always use is fireball, and I don't hate it. It's fun, but it was definitely like, you're charmed and need to attack your friends. I'm going to use my fireball.
Well, I guess it also kind of depends on like how the DM words it, because like I know some spells make it more or less intense, but like you can be like, oh, you think that your party member just attacked you, and it's like, oh, well, I'll attack back in retaliation. Or it's like, oh, hey, you think that this person is the sole reason that your family died 8 years ago and is the root of all of your suffering for the past 8 years. And like, obviously, your motivation is going to be higher. And you're like, oh, fuck that person.
Right.
I hit them with a disintegrate.
I always like, and I never played a character that had this, but it's like the power word kill. Like, I don't even know what it does, but I love that that's just like a meme that gets thrown out there sometimes.
Power word kill is actually a very easy spell. It's a 9th level spell, and as long as your target has less than 100 hit points, they instantly die.
That sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks hard.
Yeah, there was when I was talking about Barwalk, when I threw the Lich at my party members, they were like just too low level to deal with that. So what I did is I had another I like to use scripted events to set scenes. And so they had an NPC with them, and the NPC was like a rogue, and they're like, I'm going to go scout it out first. And then they didn't come back for a while, and that was because the Lich used power word kill on them, because it was because it thought that was the only person coming in, because it hasn't. I gave it a good reason. It was like, oh, it hasn't been bothered. Like, it's just like, I'm just kind of eating the souls of people here. I don't really think anyone's coming after me. I've been here for a while, and if one person shows up, I just kill them instantly and get it over with.
See, that's where true polymorph would just be a lot of fun, though. Just turn them into a boot.
Turn them into a boot, put the boot on, kick someone in the ass.
Well, I'm sure we could come up with more fun ways to talk about bluffing, and then I'd get off topic, like always. But I think we're pretty good here. We're at the end of our time. So, gentlemen, do you have anything you'd like to plug? We'll start with Julian, because he probably has nothing.
Oh, actually, this week I got to plug in my computer when we're done here. But other than that, I have nothing yet. But I am working on it. It's a work in progress. I'll be plugging so many things. It will have to start a whole new podcast for what I want to plug.
Julian plugs things.
It's a video podcast and me just plugging and unplugging my appliances.
This one mechanic who lives just down the street from me, he got me a really sweet deal on some brakes. As per usual, twitch.tv/mboron0219. I think I died 9 times the last time I played.
That's what the counter said.
So that's what
I'm sometimes there trolling in the comments.
Yeah.
But more people are showing up, so I don't have to do it as much.
Yeah. More people are like, oh, wow, you're really bad at this game. I know. That's the whole point.
Fun fact, he was so bad. If you don't know his stream, the idea is he's playing a full mage build in vanilla Skyrim on the hardest difficulty. Fun fact, he was going through a dungeon last time, and he died 9 times, and he was not even on the hardest difficulty. So that's how bad he is at this game.
Yeah.
Aww.
I'm terrible at it. Look, I know I'm never going to make it as a professional gamer, but if I can make people laugh, it's worth it.
Not with that attitude. Well, you make people laugh, of course.
And of course, if you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, because good Lord, we need them. We are scraping the bottom of the barrel here. We're probably going to be turning into a full-on review podcast soon. You can email them at thetabletopteampodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at me at DMJoeThunder. We also stream on Twitch very rarely, but occasionally at twitch.tv/thetabletopteam. Come watch us play Murica. And maybe we'll start streaming some of our board games. I don't know. The board game things happen really spontaneously for the most part, but...
Listen, if you just want to watch us flip tables over and over for an hour... Follow us at.
That's how we get rich.
We got the restraint achievement in Tabletop Simulator, so now we can flip it as much as we want. But that's all from me. I have been your host, Joe, joined by these two Canucks from Ohio.
The Aether.
Hey, don't say I'm from Ohio. Holy cow, I just live here.
No, once you live there, you're from there.
It's a government construct, man. I don't believe it.
You look at your birth certificate and it's just whited out and it says Ohio in like crayon.
Listen, every time that they fly to Spain, who's to say they're not just flying in giant circles and it's just another part of Ohio?
That is more accurate. Yeah, take us to Cincinnati.
Thanks for listening and welcome to the Tabletop Team.